unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What's up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm solo tonight. Ian got called into work at the ballpark in Pinellas County. So it's just me, but we're here to, convey some knowledge on these games. So Hater Radio, I'm just going to do a brief one real quick about who we are. So we cover national games. So essentially the whole sport. We do a little bit of a hyper focus of USF and Tampa, Florida Gators, UCLA, and USC. I grew up a Florida fan. My dad went to Florida. 10 of my relatives went there as well. I graduated from USF. Ian graduated from USF. Ian grew up a Gator fan as well. So we both cover both of those teams because of our families and our roots in Florida. I moved out to LA about 8 years ago. Actually, literally 2 weeks away from 8 years ago. It was right around this time 8 years ago, and I decided to cover USC and UCLA because I live 30 minutes from both of those schools, and you would be really dumb not to cover teams that are right in your backyard. I know a lot of USC and UCLA fans that I work with, that I'm friends with. My wife's friends. So it's a lot of people that I'm connected to because of the proximity to these programs. So we cover them. We cover those four teams, but we cover all major games. Traditionally, what we do for this program is we like to cover any game that is significant towards major conference Power Four championship games, or has an effect on the playoffs. So, that can be anywhere from, a rivalry game to whatever. I usually I go through the whole schedule and I select around anywhere from 12 to 15 games. This week we have I think it's 17 or 18. It's crazy. This is one of the biggest weeks, but that's because the effect a lot of these games will have on the playoffs. So there is a ton of going on this week, a ton of games, meaningful games, which, again, is why I'm so happy that we moved to a 12-team playoff, because it opens the door for so many more programs, so many more fans to get involved this late into the season. Usually when there was 2 or 3 weeks left, there was only 3 or 4 teams that really even cared. Now it's everybody, literally the entire top 25 is waiting to see what happens. You got a school like Miami who, 2 weeks ago we thought were dead, and then all of a sudden now, boom, they're right back into it. They were in the playoffs. If the regular season ended yesterday, the playoff spot they would be I think the 11th spot. So right there, it tells you that nothing is dead until it's completely over with. So you have a chance, and the season is meaningful now for people, which is great for the game. And I wanted to last say, shout out to USF getting that ranking, because that's huge, because that's the first time ever they've been ranked in a situation like this. It means a lot for the school. Last week they had Sports Center on campus, and it was a huge crowd there, and they got the win against UTSA. And this game against Navy, we'll talk about it, but it's going to be a huge game, and I'm super excited for it. Okay, let's move on to the first game. So this is the Week 12 preview show. So our first game I have is Clemson and Louisville. I believe this game is on Friday night. A couple of these games are on Friday. I think the Minnesota-Oregon one as well. Clemson, Louisville. So you got Clemson coming off. So, and what I like to do, Ian has his own kind of way of doing things as far as how he goes about his predictions and his analysis. And the way I like to do it, that I've done really kind of honed in this year, is taking the two best representations of each team in these matchups. So, like for instance, I only have one for Clemson just because they've had a lot of losses. But for Louisville, I have two games that like match what their like best output is. So they lost to Cal 29-26 last week in overtime, and then they beat Miami 24-21. And then what I like to do is like go into those the stats wise, because I have like the breakdown of like what each player did, and then like what like if they were having like success on third downs, on conversions, were they like behind the margin on their turnover margins, and then like for instance, in these games, like Louisville lost to Cal in overtime. It was a close game. It was back and forth. It didn't seem like there was anything standing out except for the quarterback for Cal. God, I'm not going to butcher his name. JKS. I'm just going to go by that. The young kid. He had 323 yards, and the receivers. DeJesus had a really good game. 158 yards. Cal had 427 total yards, 350 passing total. So obviously, Louisville is susceptible to the pass there, and Clemson on the flip side, with Klubnik, I've not seen anything all year that makes me afraid of their passing game. So Louisville might be all right there. When there's a good quarterback, they will struggle against them. They had a really good game against Miami defensively against the pass, because Carson Beck kind of just throws up prayers and threw a lot of interceptions that game. That was 4 interceptions for Beck in that game. But besides that, I think this Louisville team is gettable on their defense is the defensive side. So I feel like Clemson can score some points in this game. But then, I look at Clemson and they're a wounded team. They lost quite a few games this year. They struggled throughout the year. Hold on a second. Second alarm going off. Sorry about that, folks. But I feel like Louisville is just the better team here. They've gotten quite a few good wins. They beat Pitt earlier in the year. They lost to UVA. But the Cal loss, I don't know, that it kind of mystified me, because I was surprised by that score on Saturday. But the Cal team with JKS, that kid's a good quarterback. I don't know if a lot of people know about this kid, but he puts up a lot of yardage, and he's got a really strong arm. But I'm going to go with Louisville in this one, just because I think Louisville's the better team. It's in Louisville. I feel like it's a night game. I think should be a lot of hype for Louisville in this game, because if they keep winning, they really have a shot at getting to the ACC championship game and potentially a playoff spot. So I'm going to say Louisville wins like probably 31-24. Okay, next game we got is Minnesota, Oregon. Apologize for this one because I don't have a ton on Minnesota. I actually was looking up it last as I was doing the prep here. So I do have it on my desktop here, or on my laptop. So Minnesota beat Michigan State last week 23-20 in overtime, and they got smoked the week before by Iowa 41-3. So I'm not too hyped on Minnesota, but they've also feasted on some bad teams for the most part. Besides that, they are like an average Big Ten team, but they they really haven't played anyone outside of Ohio State that's like a very strong team. The only other one I can see is probably Iowa, and then they play Oregon next, or they're playing Oregon in this one, but that's it. Like, out of their whole schedule, they've had 3 tough games all year, which is ridiculous. But again, that's the Big Ten. They have a lot of average to below average teams. There are 4 or 5 good teams, Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, and Michigan, and like Illinois probably. But like outside of that, everyone else is kind of like not good. Like you got Michigan State that's not good, Northwestern, Purdue, Rutgers, Nebraska, Wisconsin. There are a ton of teams that are just not good at all in the Big Ten. And so these teams will feast on those if they have the right schedule, which they do here. And so they feasted on them all year. And so Minnesota has been able to like build up a better record per se, like, numbers wise. But if you look at it deeper, it doesn't actually look that good, even though they are 6-3. I think this Oregon team, there's been a ton said about them, that huge win against Iowa. They barely won, but you know what? Like it was a rainy game, and Iowa was a really good team. Iowa kept Indiana, the number 2 team in the country, to a 2015 game. So, like this Oregon team, I think is sound. Really only outside of that loss to Indiana, they've looked pretty good. And again, they've been lucky as well because, besides that Penn State win and Iowa game, they don't have a ton of like top-notch victories. They do play Washington after this and USC, so they have some other games to like showcase how good they are. But I feel like Oregon, this one, they're just the better team here. I like Dante Moore a ton. I feel like that throw he made to put them in position to kick that field goal was top tier. Like it's definitely an NFL throw. I mean, you don't see many guys make that throw even in the NFL. But I like Oregon here. I feel like their defense is strong enough to like stop Minnesota enough, and I feel like Dante Moore should have a good game. I'm going to say Oregon wins like, I don't know, probably like 28 to like 20 game. Okay, moving on. We've got Wisconsin, Indiana, and I believe this is on Saturday. This Wisconsin team has been battered. They've lost a ton of games, but they came back last week. Luke Fickell got that, what is it, the warden's call to like prevent his death sentence. So he's coming back next year. And so you'll see Fickell still at the helm. And I think that kind of like gave them some confidence here in this game. When they beat Washington. They won 13-10, and it was funny. I was looking at the stats, and like their passing stats were like 48 passing yards, and they rushed the ball well. They had 157 yards rushing, but I didn't like. I looked at it, was like 4 or 5 guys threw passes, and it was like nobody threw over like 20 yards. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. And but they got the win. As far as anything notable at that game, from that game, they got 4 sacks in that game, and they had a +2 turnover margin. So getting after the quarterback is huge for them, which I think they can do against Mendoza a little bit. The line for Indiana has been shown to like give up some pressure. He was under a lot of pressure in that Penn State game. But I like Indiana a ton. Again, a bunch of these games right in a row in the front are like kind of like more favorites heavy, just because I may be wrong in some of them, but it feels like they're just, some of those are the better teams, and like their opponents are just not up to snuff. So I feel like even with this one, Indiana's the better team here. Indiana should win this one handily. I'm thinking like Indiana wins like probably 35 to like 14 or something like that. And it's like, Wisconsin, may have a good defensive game, like similar to what Penn State had. So maybe it may be a lower total for Indiana, but I feel like Indiana's a good enough team where they took that lesson from last week surviving, and the game's also in Bloomington. So like expect Indiana to get that home cooking, which they've done really well. They've responded really well in front of their crowd. So I expect Indiana to come out big. Like I said, 35-17. Okay, moving on. I got South Carolina, Texas A&M in the next one. this South Carolina team, I don't know what we're going to get. The offense has just been kind of weak all year. Like Sellers, has to do a million things. And, I'm looking at his totals from the loss to LSU and then the loss to Oklahoma. He had 124 yards in both of those games, which is not very good. But defensively, they were able to keep Mateer in check for the most part and was able to keep Nussmeier in check a little bit. He threw 2 interceptions in that one. So defensively, I think they can keep themselves in the game against Texas A&M. But I don't know. This Texas A&M team is kind of rolling right now, but they also struggled against Arkansas a couple weeks ago. I'm curious to see what happens. I think the game being in College Station helps Texas A&M a ton. I think it would probably be a little bit more difficult for Texas A&M if they're on the road, but it didn't hurt them a ton against Missouri because they kind of, rolled through that one pretty easily. I mean, granted, Missouri was out without Perbula, so they didn't really need as much there. But no, as far as this game, I feel like Marcel Reed's going to have a good game. He put up a ton of yards in the last couple weeks. One of the games that I have highlighted for them was the game against Notre Dame where Reed threw for 360 yards, 2 TDs, an interception. Craver had a huge game. Concepcion had a huge game. Those are 2 huge playmakers right there, and Moss as well. And there's another running back. I can't remember his name offhand, but yeah, the A&M is loaded with with offensive pieces, and defensively, that D lineman, I think his name is Howell for Texas A&M. Man, the guy's a stud. He just is unblockable. The guy is just in the backfield, and I feel like if he has a huge day and shuts down Sellers, being able to get loose, I feel like Texas A&M should roll in this game. I'm gonna say Texas A&M wins probably 28 to 17. Okay. Next we've got game day comes to town in Pittsburgh, Notre Dame and Pitt. Now, we haven't focused on Pitt that much this year because they really haven't played any marquee games outside of some of the early ones when they played Louisville and Florida State. Last couple of weeks, they played NC State. They beat them. They played I can't remember who else they played, but they played someone else that was not too big. So their next 3 weeks though are crazy. So they got Notre Dame this week. They've got Georgia Tech, and then they've got Miami. So 3 teams that potentially could be in the playoffs. So right now, Pitt is in a playoff eliminator the next 3 weeks. And if they get to the ACC championship game, that one might be in a playoff eliminator as well. So this whole 4 weeks for Pitt is kind of a lot of pressure. It's turned up to 11. I expect, Pitt with this guy. And again, I don't know if many people know about this guy because he's kind of gone under the radar. But Pitt's QB, Heinschel, the kid is just unreal, man. He puts up huge numbers week in, week out. He can run the ball well. When they beat NC State, he threw for 423 yards, 3 TDs. Their wide receivers put up huge numbers. Hicks, Johnson, Williams. Seems like every game they're having huge games. Then another guy, Reed. So there's their running back. So they have a ton of playmakers that can put up a ton of yardage. So expect Pitt to put up a Texas A&M game against Notre Dame where they're going to score a lot and they're probably going to move the ball a ton. But Notre Dame is a solid team though. CJ Carr, quarterback wise, after that Miami game where they lost, they ended up losing to Texas A&M as well. But he's really impressed ever since. There's been some games where he's put up 300 plus yards and he's just looked dominant. Some games he's put up less, in the USC game, he put up 136. But their defense kind of really stood out there in that game. They were They were effective in forcing turnovers, and then they were also they were effective in converting. Well, not so, but no, they were in the USC game. You know, that's probably their best test so far outside of the Miami and Texas A&M game, and I feel like they passed that game and they looked, you know, like a top tier team. And you know, USC is up there. Like I think they're like 17 or 16 right now. And so like, you know, expect this Notre Dame team to show the same thing that they showed in that game. They should show up in this game. You know, Jeremiah Love, a monster on the ground. In that USC game, he had 228 yards. And then Price had 87 as well. So I expect Notre Dame to probably run the ball a ton, and then have CJ Carr to like fill in the like inner, you know, the third and shorts or whatever to try to get those conversions. But again, they're going to need it because Pitt is going to score. And so if Notre Dame is not able to keep pace, this could be a shootout. But they've lost one of those shootouts with that Texas A&M game. So I don't know what to expect from Notre Dame in this one. I feel like Pitt has some momentum here to like take advantage here and to try to win this one. I'm gonna go with Pitt. Like I know like Notre Dame, like this is it. Like the rest of their schedule is pretty soft. So you know after this game, they need this one. But I feel like Pitt with Heinzel, like the kid is just a stud. And I don't know if many people know about him. I've already said that, but like I just feel like he's got something that like we have not seen yet in a while at Pitt, probably since like Dan Marino, really, like some kind of like all-star quarterback. You know, like Pickens was good, or Pickett or whatever his name was, the guy with the small hands. But he never really like lit up the world. He was like good enough, but like this guy's like putting up huge numbers. And I feel like he's gonna do that for the rest of his career. Like he just seems like, oh, this guy's like doing like stuff we haven't seen. So especially as a freshman. Okay, so I'm gonna say Pitt wins like probably like 35 to like 28. Okay, moving on to Michigan Northwestern. This Michigan team, outside of that Washington win, is kind of feasted on some bad teams lately. Michigan State, Purdue. The Washington win stands out, but like the rest of the year, like really the only other one that like besides that is probably the Nebraska win, but like that's it. You know, I'm not really impressed with this team. I mean, Underwood is a good quarterback, and he's only a freshman, and they run the ball very well, and they play really good defense. But they're not like outside of that one receiver for them. They're not really like a great aerial attack. But again, Northwestern isn't very good, so like I expect Michigan to win this one pretty easily. Like Stone doesn't put up huge numbers. They don't have a ton of offensive threats for Northwestern. So even though Northwestern, they did beat Penn State, but that was like the next day Franklin was fired. So what can you really take from that? They lost to Nebraska. So I got Michigan in this one. I'm going to say Michigan wins like, I don't know, 28 to like, let's say 21. Okay, moving on. Arizona, Cincinnati. Arizona, a sneaky good team. With Fafita, they've been, a solid team all year that like doesn't get any real notoriety because they're playing later games. They're on the West Coast, so you don't really see them a ton, but they have done quite well considering the lack of press on their team. They're 6-3. They lost to Iowa State earlier in the year, but they recently beat Kansas, They destroyed Colorado. They lost to Houston, and they barely lost to BYU. So they're not a bad team, honestly. They're really not. This game, Cincinnati, I don't love them a ton because outside of their Iowa State win, they lost to Utah, and they got smoked. And I don't know. I just don't know what to make of this Cincinnati team. Their next 3 weeks are Arizona, BYU, and TCU. So if they're going to be anything, they're going to have to win these games. I don't think they're going to beat BYU, even though that game is in Cincinnati. I think they have a better shot here against Arizona, and the TCU game is on the road. So I think if they're going to win one of the three, it's going to be this one. I think it's going to be a close one, though. I like Arizona to keep pace, and I'm going to say it's going to be probably a 24-20 game, and maybe Cincinnati scores late to put them up ahead. Okay, so moving on, I got USF Navy. Again, the biggest game in USF's history. It just keeps happening this year because they don't have a ton of history. They're only 29 seasons or whatever, so it's only been since 97, so they haven't been around forever. Got that ranking, the CFP ranking, and if the season ended today, they would be in the playoff. They'd be playing Georgia in Athens. A lot to live up to. This game is huge. I don't know if Horvath is going to play. I think the last I saw is that he is a game time decision, which whatever. I get it. They held him out for the Notre Dame game, and I get that because that game in the long run didn't mean as much because that's a non-conference game. But this game here means everything because if he's not going to go, the guy that was in there before or last week did not perform that well. I mean, he only had 100 rushing yards, which is good, but that's was their only offense was him. Something saying he has a broken thumb, but that's AI. I'm not believing that. I'm not seeing it. So I'm not seeing an update yet. So I'm not seeing it anywhere. So I'm just going to say I'm thinking more than likely he's going to play just because it makes the most sense. This is their biggest game the rest of the year. They have to win this game if they want any shot at, doing anything in the American Conference. So I feel they're going to have him play, and for USF, if they win this game, then they're, right there in the mix for everything. So it's they got to keep winning. Well, also Navy has Memphis in 2 weeks after this. So, but I don't know. Navy, solid defensively, but they have given up some explosive plays. North Texas was able to get some explosive plays on them, and they were able to run the ball on them as well with what's his name? I can't remember the North Texas running back, but again, Byron Brown, with that offense, they score a ton. They even in their loss to Memphis, they had 31 points. They had 63 against North Texas. They had, a ton against UTSA last week. They called off the Dogs in the beginning of the third quarter. They could have scored 70, 80 points if they really kept going. So USF, if they play sound defense, force the turnovers like they've been able to, they can win the turnover battle. And that'll be huge in that game because Navy predicates themselves on holding the ball and possessing the ball for long chunks of the game. And so that if you're stealing possessions from them and also preventing them from getting extra possessions, it kind of, works against them. And so that they're able to take advantage of that. And I feel like USF can do that. They've been better in the turnover margin. Outside of that Memphis game, really, where they were -1 in the turnover margin, almost everywhere else they've been really good at keeping holding onto the ball, and they were +2 in that North Texas game. So I feel like USF can do that here if Byram, is safe with the ball. He can put up his 250 plus his 100 rushing yards. He's been putting that up like all year. It's kind of crazy how much yardage he's been putting up all year, which is awesome. I'm loving seeing that for him. And like we said the other day, like we feel like he's a Heisman potential candidate. And if he keeps winning, especially these marquee games, this Memphis game, and then these next two, and then potentially into the conference championship game, he would really shoot up the rankings to potentially get to New York. So we'll see. I like USF a ton. I feel like, this is their game. And I feel nervous. Yes, I think we all are as USF fans. Ian always talks about it. It's like bull derangement syndrome or bull, like, I don't know, whatever it is. It's like just essentially just the fear of failure, and like the fact that over the years that the team has gotten to these moments and not succeeded. But I don't know, there's something about this team. They've really met the moment, beating Florida on the road, beating Boise State, beating North Texas, and now like that Memphis loss hurt, and the Miami loss was just kind of like whatever. But like, I feel like this team has really like navigated the schedule very well, and this is it. These next 3 weeks, every game is the biggest game in USF's history as we go on here. So they've got to win these games, and it starts with Saturday, and it's exciting. I'm excited for it, and I can't wait to see them play. So I'm going to go with USF. I'm going to say like a 34 to like 24 game, and maybe they score that one late to go up 2 scores, and then Navy just really can't do anything in the fourth quarter after that. Okay, moving on to Oklahoma, Alabama. Man, this game, like last year with Milroe, it was like whatever. And like Milroe had like one of his worst games ever, and they lost like 24-7 or something like that. But this year, Oklahoma, better suited, Mateer, a better quarterback. Bama with, Ty Simpson, and Ty Simpson looks great. He looked great in the game against Tennessee, great in the game against Missouri. Jam Miller is a stud running back. You got Ryan Williams. You got Jeremy Bernard. The defense is stout enough to make some plays. I feel like this Bama team is really like a wrecking ball ever since that FSU loss. And I have not yet seen this Mateer-led Oklahoma team kind of counter what the narrative was the last couple of weeks since that loss to Texas. And also, I don't know, this Oklahoma team looked like world beaters in the beginning of the year, and then they've really kind of just, I don't know, just not really made that much noise since then. They need this one more than anything, because if they lose this one, then they fall behind in potentially in the playoff rankings, and I don't think they can recover. So they had that loss to Texas, and then they lost to Ole Miss. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. They looked better in the Tennessee game, and that was 2 weeks ago. I just feel like it's in Tuscaloosa. I feel like Alabama's the better team. Oklahoma could surprise here, though, like with their offense. Maybe they're going to cook up something. They've been doing better, like since that Texas game where they only scored 6 points. They've been putting up better outputs. I still feel like Alabama's the better team, though. I like Alabama in this one a ton. I'm going to say Alabama wins like probably let's say 31 to like 28 in a close one, and maybe like Alabama stops Mateer, like forces an interception late, and they go on to win. Okay, next game we've got is Virginia Duke. Man, this UVA team, after that loss to Wake Forest, it looks like all is gone, but they're not that far off. They just need to keep winning. If they can get into the ACC championship game, they could have a shot at the playoff. But I feel like if they don't get to the ACC championship game, they more than likely will not get to the playoffs. So they need this one. They need to beat Duke to keep pace in the ACC. Right now, the standings are with these teams. Let's see. So Virginia is second in the ACC. Again, that lost NC State, and I keep bringing it up, that lost NC State does not count towards the conference because it was a scheduled non-conference game between the two because they were not scheduled to play their games in conference, and they've played each other for years. I think it's like 100 years or something like that. And so they wanted to keep the rivalry going. So this game was scheduled non-conference wise, even though they're conference teams. It's weird, but whatever. It is what it is. So it doesn't count towards it. So they only have one loss in conference. And Georgia Tech is first in the conference. And you have Pitt at third, SMU at 4, and Duke at 5 with 4-1. So this is a huge game because even though Duke is 5-4, they still have an outside shot of getting to the ACC championship game, which, crazier things have happened, but it is possible. They don't really have that tough of a schedule the next couple of weeks outside this game. Like they should beat Duke has North Carolina next week and then Wake Forest. They potentially could beat both of those. So if they beat Virginia and they're a one-loss team, a one-loss conference team, they could get to the ACC championship game with 4 losses. So it would look really bad on their conference, but that's what is what it is. That's how you set it up. So as far as this game, I was impressed with Morris, like more in the beginning of the year. He seemed like put up some decent numbers, but it's like I think he's like playing through an injury because he's like not been that great, and then he's been like out of games. Like he was out of the Wake Forest game, so it's been kind of limited as far as his potential. So it's been rough for Virginia. Their offense, I think they only scored. What did they score last week against Wake Forest? I think it was like 9 points or something like that. Yeah, it was 16-9. So, it's been rough. Like they got lucky the 2 weeks before that because they had Cal and North Carolina, but this team has just been kind of like playing with fire because they've been in so many OT games and they're like barely winning these games. So I just feel like I don't know, UVA. They're a very good team. I like their coach. I just like Morris more than anything. I think that's what has made this offense as dynamic as it is. And if he is not out there, they're not as good. And I think they're going to lose this game. I like Duke in this one. I don't love Duke a ton, but I like Mensa more, especially against UVA's backup if Morris is not able to play. Mensa, puts up huge numbers. They're not running the ball that great against teams, but they are putting up huge passing yardage. So I like Duke in this one. I'm going to say Duke wins like probably, I don't know, 34 to like 20. Okay, maybe even less because I just don't think UVA is going to be able to score in this one. I'm going to say, like 34, maybe even 17. Okay, another ACC matchup. This is going to be a stinker. I just wanted to put it on there because Georgia Tech, see how they rebounded from last week or 2 weeks ago. So Georgia Tech lost to NC State 48-36. Haynes King had a huge game, 408 yards, through the air and 103 on the ground. So 511 yards. That's crazy yardage totals, and 4 TDs. So obviously Georgia Tech, their offense is predicated on what Haynes King is able to do, and when it's going good, it's going real good. So I feel like it's going to go good against this team. BC is terrible. They only have one win. They beat Fordham earlier in the year. The rest of the games they've been essentially blown out every game. They're like, I think they're 1-9 right now. They're just a bad team. So I expect Georgia Tech to win. It's more of me just putting it on here to see if Georgia Tech can bounce back from this one. I'm going to say Georgia Tech wins like probably 38 to like 20. Okay, another ACC game. NC State going up against Miami. You know, I like NC State in this one, but I feel like Miami's probably going to win. CJ Bailey, solid quarterback, super tall, athletic, puts up a ton of numbers. He looked really good in the Georgia Tech win. He had 340 yards, 2 TDs, and a rushing TD. Their running back, Scott, ran for 196 yards and a TD. So Miami can be got. Like, their defense is not like, it's not as stellar as I think people thought they were at the beginning of the year. They played a redshirt freshman in CJ Carr in Notre Dame. So, those numbers look inflated in his first game. Then they played Florida with like the worst offense in the entire country, who fired their coach 3 games later. And then they beat Florida State, who has been terrible all year. So I think, in those games that they lost, Louisville looked really good on offense. Moss didn't put up a ton of numbers, but their wide receiver had a huge game. And then also the SMU game, Jennings had a really big game. And then outside of that, like Stanford game, Stanford's not very good. Syracuse dealing with quarterback injury, and they didn't look very good. So this Miami team, I don't think is as good as they probably thought they were. But I still feel like they're going to get the win here. I like NC State a ton, but I feel like Miami's going to win. It's in Miami. I feel like Miami wins like, I'm going to say, some of their scores have been like lower scoring, like not high scores. So it's like, I'm going to say like probably like a 27-24 game. It's the typical Miami score this year, for whatever reason. So I'm going to say 27-21 or 27-24, and like Miami gets a stop late, and maybe CJ Bailey like throws an interception or something. Okay, next game we've got is Iowa USC here in LA. This Iowa team has been able to like put up solid wins, and then like the top tier teams that they've played, Indiana and Oregon, they've barely lost to. So this team is capable of playing with the better teams of the Big Ten. I feel like because it's in LA, it gives USC an advantage. I feel like they'll have the home cooking. I like Maava a ton. I think he's able to put up points, yardage, and like King Miller, man, dude, walk on extraordinaire. This kid was like nowhere to be found to start the year, and now he's like the stud running back for them. It's crazy. And he's put up huge numbers in these games too. And, again, wide receiver 1, Lemon is just a stud. If you don't know this kid is just amazing. And both him and Lemon and Lane, just stud wide receivers. But I expect USC to come out with this one because they've got this one, and then they've got Oregon on the road, and then they've got the UCLA game at home. So this is it. If they win out, they more than likely will get into the playoff, because it would be a solid win against Iowa and then a really good looking win of Oregon on the road. So this is next 3 weeks, playoff eliminator again for USC. We'll see. I like them a ton in this one because I feel like they can stymie Gronowski enough. I feel like their passing attack is not that great. They really only can run the ball a bit, but I feel like USC will be able to do enough on defense to keep them in check, and then Maava conversely can be able to score a ton. So like I'm going to say like USC wins like 34 to like let's say like 20-21. Okay, moving on. I'm not going to talk too much about this one. Florida Ole Miss. There's not much to talk about. You know, like Florida's just not very good right now. Fired their coach. Trey Wilson out for the year, maybe or not. I don't know for sure. Hurt his ankle, had surgery. Dallas Wilson out for the year. Tank Hawkins sat out for the rest of the year. Vernell Brown III has been hurt a little bit. Aiden Mizell has been hurt. So like when the beginning of the year, the wide receiving core was a huge strength. Now it's become a bit of a weakness, similar to the Bucks, where the Bucks had like, all these receivers. Now it's like, you know, Mike Evans is out for the year. What's his face? Chris Godwin's still struggling from his injuries. McMillan is, you know, dealing with a neck injury that he suffered in preseason. So they went from like a huge strength, just like with the Gators, to a huge weakness because now you're playing with like backups, like, and, you know, walk-on. So it's like, it sucks, you know. It's like I had high hopes for this year. You know, if it was a better coach, better offensive scheme, it could have been potentially a playoff team. You know, you've got Jaden Ball on the defense, but they've just been terrible all year. And outside of that Texas game, they've just looked atrocious. And it's tough because I loved watching DJ Lagway last year, and I felt like that was just the beginning. And like I was like, oh man, he's going to be, you know, improving. He's going to do better. And he never really took off this year. You know, in that Kentucky game, he threw 3 interceptions, and it was just rough to see. And so it's tough, you know, because there's a ton of talent, ton of defensive talent. The team, you know, the defense has kept them in all year, except for that Kentucky game where they look like they quit. And it's tough to see this because, you know, there could have been better results. And I was supportive of Billy into from the end of last year into this year because I was like, all right, maybe there's something there. But then it fizzled so quick. Like, you know, that loss to USF really killed every momentum that they had. And then got smoked against Miami, lost to LSU, and got smoked by Texas A&M, and that was it, you know. And like, he's done, and it is what it is. And you know, this is Ole Miss's game to win. Like, Ole Miss should win this game easily. Chambliss is, you know, a very solid quarterback, putting up huge numbers every week. He's the engine for their offense, and their defense is strong enough to, you know, keep them in most games. You know, outside of that loss to Georgia, most offenses really haven't done much against them. But I don't know if Florida's good enough to really score a ton of points. Like, they haven't scored more than like 20 or 22 points all year. I think it was the one time against LIU and Texas. So I don't imagine that to happen here. Maybe 17 points if they're lucky. And so I'm expecting Ole Miss to score like at least 35. So I'm going to say like 35-14, and that's the final score. And you know what, Lane Kiffin, we'll see what you do. I know everyone's like hyped up about him potentially going to Florida. We'll see. I mean, I would hope he would because it's like something that he's talked about a lot, but we won't know because if they make the playoffs and they're in the playoff a long run, then we may not even they won't be able to deal with him till, I don't know, it could be not until like January 1st or maybe later. So, you know, I know these Ole Miss fans are really like hating on Florida fans and and it's back and forth. And it sucks because like this business is like so cutthroat. But it is what it is, and um, I just want a better coach for Florida, and I'm tired of seeing these losses. Someone had posted like the run Florida's record since the last couple of years since 2020, and it was like 8-4, 6-7, 6-7, 5-7, whatever. And like last year was 8-5, and this year they're like 3-6 or whatever. And it's just, it's frustrating. I'm just tired of losing. I just want to see them win. But no, it's just again what I've always seen is like people always talked about it. The Gator Nation football podcast. Those guys, they've all James and Alan. They've talked about it where it's like one coach is the difference. Like Alabama, they went for 15 years or whatever it was after they won the title in '92, and they struggled with various coaches. They fired like a guy for like I don't know what it was. Price was there for like a couple of months or whatever, and so like it just happens. You get stuck in a rut of bad coaches, and you just can't get out of it. And it just takes one. It took one Saban, and they ended up winning 6 titles in 17 years or whatever it was. And like I feel like Florida could get on that run if they get good enough coach. And you never know. Like it could be Lane Kiffin. It could be I thought it was going to be Kirk Cignetti last year. I've been a huge Cignetti fan. So, anyways, let's move on. Talking too much about this. Okay. UCLA, Ohio State. Gonna be a blowout. Sorry, my UCLA friends, but I like their offense since they fired everyone and put Neuheisel in charge of the offense, but getting blown out by Indiana, and it's going to be the same here. This Ohio State team is stacked. Wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, just ton of playmaker, Carnell Tate, Julian Sand is putting up huge numbers. He's up there for the Heisman rankings, and I don't expect anything less. I expect Ohio State to win this one probably like, I don't know, I'm going to go like 45 or 50 to like 14 or something like that. And it sucks because, UCLA's looked better the last month and a half, but when you go up against a buzzsaw like Indiana as well, they're just not as good as those teams, and they're just going to pants you, and that's what they're going to do. Okay, moving on to what we got here. We've got last two here. Texas, Georgia. Ooh, Texas, Georgia. I'm curious about this one. I'm curious if Arch Manning can come into Athens and do what Alabama did to Georgia. I feel like they can. I feel like they're capable. Like Arch has gotten better as the year has gone on. Honestly, considering his slow start, he looked like he was going to struggle all year, but he's really kind of turned it around here. Georgia struggled against a bad Florida team. They did beat Ole Miss. They lost to Alabama. I don't know. I mean, this is a very curious game. I'm going to say this is a coin flip, honestly, between these two because they're both very capable, very talented teams. I think Sarkisian offensively is a better game planner as far as like attacking, a defense like Kirby Smart's. I feel like Kirby's defense is not as strong as it has been the last several years. I feel like, Ole Miss put up a ton of points and ton of yards. Florida did pretty decently against them, had moments where it could have been even better. I feel like, Texas can score. They have playmakers. I don't know, though, but it's in Athens. So that's what it's like. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Like, if it was in Texas, but I said that last year, and Georgia won that one. So I'm going to go with Georgia. So I'm going to say Georgia wins, but I'm going to say close. I'm going to say like a 28-24 game and like probably Texas has the ball last, and they cannot make it happen. They have to score a touchdown, and they can't convert on like a fourth down, and then that's the game, and that's how Georgia wins. Okay, last couple ones here. TCU, BYU. TCU, I didn't get it. I didn't get to look at their stats and like prep for them. Like I said, there were 17 games, so it's kind of hard to go for all of them when I only have like one real day to really prep for. So let's see. Yeah, they lost to Iowa State. They beat West Virginia. They beat Baylor, and they lost to Kansas State. I mean, this TCU team, I don't know what to make of them because they've looked good in some games, and then other games they get smoked. And I like their quarterback. I like their wide receiver a ton. McAllister, I think is his name. That guy can put up a ton of yards. I don't know. What I like because I like BYU a ton. I like Bear Bachmeier. I love what's the guy's name? Kingston and Roberts and Martin, the running back. Like Kingston and Roberts are two great receivers. Roberts is like the speedy guy. Kingston's like the slot guy. Hoover for TCU, that's the quarterback, and the wide receiver for them is McAllister. This is a good test for BYU, especially after that loss to Texas Tech. If they want to get back in the mix for everything, they only have one loss, so clearly it's not the end of their season. I think BYU wins this one. It's in Provo. I think they bounce back. I think BYU wins probably in a close one. I'm gonna say like a 34-28 game. Okay, last one we got is Ian's G5 game of the week. Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State. I don't know a ton about these two because remember I defer to Ian on these G5 games because he knows all about G5 games. So this game will decide who will get home field advantage and a conference championship spot. So kind of a big game for both of them. I'm just going to go with Jacksonville State because I know more about them. I've been seeing them come up in different spots on like the highlight shows and whatnot. So I'm going to say Jacksonville State wins I'm going to say like a 28-17 game. Okay, that is the show, y'all. Check us out on haterradio.com for all of our articles. I'm going to have one up on Friday talking about the USF Navy game. Again, the biggest game in USF history. And then check us on all of our socials. Hater Radio, just type that in. It comes right up. Ian's handles, I cannot remember, but his one for X Twitter is G5_Gibson. So look that up for Ian. That's the show, y'all. Catch us on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Sunday and Wednesdays. We do the recap show on Sunday and the preview show on Wednesdays. That's it, y'all. Enjoy these games. We'll talk to you on Sunday. Have a good weekend, y'all.